So, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to the last of our events for this year. We're very pleased to have a subject that we haven't touched on for some time in maritime archaeology. And we're pleased to welcome Dr. Goerlitz, who will speak, as you see, on ABORA IV expedition from Varna across the Black Sea to. So you're most welcome. Thanks very much indeed. I'll put up the big Latin.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me, and I will introduce myself during my lecture.
Please.
So we never spoke. How long can I talk? Because I could speak forever.
Thank you for raising that question. We prefer it if the lecture goes on no longer than an hour.
Well, should be possible. Yes, speaking about ABORA is touching not only England, also Turkey, and I'm also happy that the Rose family is with me, because we got to know in Çanakkale, but I will touch also with my navigation. But let's start by the beginning. When I speak about prehistoric navigation, we have no idea what we're speaking about. When I was at school, at Atabay's age, I learned at school Homo sapiens has an age of about roughly 40,000 years. Today we have to say we even cannot prove how old Homo sapiens really is. We have estimations 300,000, 400,000 years old, and this gives us a titter how early our species spread across our planet. And as everybody knows, our planet is blue. 70% of our Earth's surface are covered by water, and this gives us a titter how important prehistoric navigation was for the last part of our evolution. And in order to prove that the global village is at least invented 10,000 years ago, I have been investigated the spread of tobacco and cocaine in ancient Egyptian mummies, and we have so many other evidence, scientific evidence and data that the man has already crossed the Atlantic Ocean long before Columbus. And in my PhD we have investigated 2 African species and 2 New World species in order to demonstrate that Columbus was the last one who has discovered America. We were able to demonstrate with Dr. Svetlana Balabanova, we have in over 3,000 Egyptian mummies the remains of the alkaloid nicotine, and in over 108 mummies remains of cocaine, and this is a typical New World plant alkaloid, which gives us an impression how long before the Spaniards the New World was being touched either by across the Atlantic Ocean, but we should not fade out also the Pacific Ocean. And this is exactly what Thor Heyerdahl has predicted 60 years before me when he set sail on the Kon-Tiki Raft. But Thor Heyerdahl has astonished millions of people, but not convinced scientists in the universities. Because with his rafts, he always went from A to B, downwind. He was never able to return from B to A. Back. And this was my goal when I saw this man on Tigris. It was in 1977 in East Germany when I grew up. I made already a few years later my first own rafts on fresh water lakes, and it was my goal to disprove Heyerdahl, to show that even the ancients were able to go against and across the wind. And shortly after the unification of East and West Germany, I was with my wife Cornelia Lorenz in Egypt, and we went up to Upper Egypt. This is a Nubian desert where we have thousands of such prehistoric, pre-dynastic rock drawings. We discovered such little strokes on the bow and sometimes also at the stern, and this made me to the idea this might be lee boards in order to control the courses. Later in Germany, but also in the United States, we made tank experiments parallel to our ABORA tests, where we could prove the efficiency of this lee board discovery. And so I can tell you this lee boards make this sailing crafts without any engine able to go also not only downwind but also across and a little bit against the wind, across to the wind, in order to come back to their homelands. And I wanted to test my hypothesis already in 1999 with ABORA I. We sailed from north of Sardinia via Corsica to Italy, about 650 kilometers, and the technique did work, but not fantastically work. That's why 2 years later I have set sail on ABORA II again in order to make such a back and forth voyage, to demonstrate by any doubt that it's possible to leave a port and coming back to the same port. And this was very important because we were able to sail incredible 65 degrees against the true wind. I don't know who is a sailor sitting here. 65 degrees against the true wind in favorable condition is digging out in jumbo jet in medieval age, because with this ability you can go to any place in the world if you want to. And in order to continue my research in my PhD, I needed to demonstrate that it was possible also to go the opposite way from the New World back into the Old World. And the main goal was to demonstrate we were able to overcome these huge water swirls called eddies. And these eddies are the main competitor if you want to go by simple sailing craft back from the New World into the Old World, because these objects are rotating very fast and they are very sustainable. They last for many weeks and they go the opposite way back to the New World. And this was the major opinion of the so-called scholars. They believed such ancient square-riggers couldn't go back into the Old World due to these water eddies. And this is what the slide is demonstrating. We touched 3 of such huge water swirls and we were able to overcome a distance of about 4,400 kilometers. It's roughly a little bit more than 2,000 miles what we could cover. Unfortunately, 2007 was not the right year to do so. Number one was based to very limited financial resources. ABORA III, when we set sail in Big Apple, had an age of 3 years and the reed was already rotten a bit, and also the transportation has suffered the boats a lot. But even more important was the fact that in 2007 we got one of the most worst summer ever recorded in modern mankind history, and so we got 13 storms over the position of the Titanic. We even got a crack in the hull, we lost our stern, but we were able to repair it, and I brought some video records with me to demonstrate you that you are not in the mercy of the element if you cross the Atlantic Ocean on a papyrus raft. I will show you now. Otherwise you haven't read voyages. This was a little bit more challenging. And when I saw my stern drifting away, I know this is maybe the end of the expedition, but not the end of our life and how we managed the situation. I have a film record with me.
After a long day of hard work, the moment has come to disconnect the destroyed stern. The sight of the drifting stern in the wake raised the question: how to continue? How will the crew handle this disaster? Mark summed up how we all felt.
Mark, how is the mood at the moment?
Super. Fantastic. Couldn't be better. We don't have the wind. The boat is broken. What more could you wish?
Was willst du mehr?
I've decided to call for action, so as not to lose the morale of the devoted crew. We've realised that we can't continue the journey without an escort ship. We have to call a ship from the Azores to come and get us. But we didn't give up so easily. In accordance to ancient Egyptian design, we built a rudder blade. We should mount the new side planks and rudder on the boat in order to replace the missing stern. These sophisticated renovations need more than 4 days. The crew set sail again. We made it. 90 degrees to 100 degrees cross the wind. We are a sailing boat. It's slightly difficult to handle, but we have a 100% control over the boat. We are sailing at least 70 degrees better than before, and we may be sailing directly towards water once we trim the side planks properly. And this with a 330 degree wind. This is what we wanted to demonstrate. The crew managed the impossible.
Yeah, I'm showing you the slides. Of course, we are very proud of having done this, but I also want to show you how important it is to deal with a team and not being a boss like in a modern group. because you have to touch the soul of everybody and you have to be a leader in such a situation, how we have collected all the information, and you have to bring harmony in such very stressful moments. And this we managed fantastically on the Raft of ABORA IV, and this was a wonderful basement also for the next step, speaking 12 years later about ABORA IV. That was my first and last expedition across the Mediterranean. And in this expedition, not the Atlantic Ocean was my goal, but the Black Sea and the so-called Northern Silky Way route. And not to Heyerdahl was my consultant, but Herodotus, this famous Greek historian, who speaks about ancient economic contacts between the Egyptians and the Black Sea territory, especially about the making of the pyramids. He reports that the pyramids were made by iron findings or iron tools, and this iron might be derived from the eastern Black Sea. And additional to this, Herodotus is also speaking about tin bronzes and amber, that this bronze and also the amber came via the Danube River from the Hyperboreans. I will go deeper in this subject a little bit later. And these two materials were the guiding light for our new ABORA IV vessel. And that's in the beginning, the initial hypothesis was to set sail in Sochi, on the foot on the Caucasus, to cross the whole Black Sea. Still in this year, I have prepared this expedition a long time in Russia. I was about 5 times in Sochi and many times at the University of Lomonosov in Moscow, but unfortunately, the Russians couldn't manage the bureaucratical questions with me, and I had to cut off the Russian court at the end of February, and I had to jump to the other coast of the Black Sea to Bulgaria. And this is the curator of the famous gold museum, the Bulgarian archaeologist Theodorokov, who has opened the door for me in Bulgaria very late. And by the support of Theodor's museum, we found a place in the end of the Varna lake, also in the inland, in the small community Beloslav, where we got sponsored by an ancient glass company, this construction field, where we started the making of ABORA IV. And Bulgaria is a very famous place in human history, because Bulgaria is the first gold culture at all in the world, where we have evidence over 6,300 years ago they have already smelted gold there. But it's not only the Varna culture, it's also the Vinča culture in Serbia, where they made first time on our planet the alloy of tin and copper to bronze. And this whole area, it's called the Danube Valley civilizations. And also in Thracia, about 1,500 years later, we have the first platin culture in Bulgaria too. The Dabene culture, or the Dabene people, made the first alloy of gold and platin even. And this about 2,300 before Christ is a very important, that's why it was a very important place what we have selected in the wake of the reports of Herodotus, who has already spoken about such people. And also the Dabene culture is reflecting some technologies of the famous Troy culture in the other side of the Thracian peninsula. And we will return to the subject also because there must have been some connection between the Black Sea and the Baltic and the Aegean Sea. And despite of this, we have also very ancient drawings of sailed reed boats. This is a famous golden plate from Varna, where we have most likely a presentation of a reed boat, even sailed, or even equipped with a big sail. This is from the late 5th millennium before Christ. We have to pay attention, 6,300 years ago. And this is a rock drawing station in Caucasus, in Gobustan. We have thousands of such ancient reed boats presented on the Caspian Sea, and this is a big evidence that the technology was also alive in the Neolithic time in the Black Sea. And this was a major question: how could these societies communicate with each other across the Black Sea, but also across the Bosporus with the eastern Mediterranean Sea? And this was the main goal of ABORA IV, of demonstrating this communication in merchant ways across the Dardanelles. This was our starting team in Bulgaria, and here are some pictures from the making of the boat. The reed was harvested 1 year before in Bolivia at the Lake Titicaca in the Andean mountains. The lake and the species, especially totora, I brought some models with me. Or yeah, maybe you can give it a right, no? The other one, that they can touch the material. Give it to the listener. And this plant is a cosmopolitan. It's growing in the Mediterranean equally as in the north of Germany, in England, in America, everywhere, even in New Zealand, and even today on the 2 islands in the Mediterranean Sea, Corfu and Sardinia, the same kind of plant is still in use to make such boats. So this tradition is still alive even in the Mediterranean today. And that's why it was not a botanical mistake to get this material from the Lake Titicaca. The reason why I selected the Lake Titicaca is, it's very easy to explain, they have no Korean people in Bolivia. Because today it's not allowed to harvest such amounts of plants in the summertime, but we need the plant under flowers, and this is impossible to get a license by the eco-protection mafia, I have to say that, because when we wanted to make ABORA IV in Sardinia, we got no permission in the same way as in Germany, and the same counts for Bulgaria, so it would be impossible to get 12 tons of this raw material to start the boat making. That's why I selected Bolivia as a harvesting area. We made the harvesting in August 2018. We tried to read. It happens. We transported the reed across the highest mountains to the Pacific Ocean, and then with 3 large containers we brought the material to Bulgaria and 2 Aymara Indians and a very well-educated team from Germany, and together we made this 14 meters long hull, and in a very special method, as the ancient Egyptians or the ancient Mesopotamians did already 5,000 years ago. I think it's a nice picture to see. It's a double hull raft with a skeleton in the middle. In May and June we got unexpectedly very strong thunderstorms. Here you see one of this very heavy bad weather. This got us additionally delay after the postponement from Russia to Bulgaria. It rained almost every day, like in a catastrophe. But little by little we were able to manage our boat. Some pictures from the rigging in accordance to almost 6,000 years old rock drawings from Upper Egypt, and with a crane, because we were very limited, very little people, we pushed the boat to the shore, and on August 1st we made the launching ceremony in the small town of Beloslav, and after just 16 days of preparation, final rigging, we were ready for departure. Due to the many delays, it was for sure that we couldn't make the whole voyage. And the initial hypothesis, I wanted to go from Sochi to Egypt, but with the delays I couldn't do this, and with the other delays in Bulgaria I couldn't sail all these places, Skiros, Lavrion, Milos, Crete. We had to shorten our navigational route, and this was a little bit disappointing, but you have to face reality if you do such outdoor projects, and sailing across the Black Sea was challenging enough. And this is a picture from the Black Sea, and here's the main crew, mainly from Germany, but also from the United States and from the Netherlands. And together we had the common goal to cross the Black Sea in the opposite way of the Argonauts, going from Varna straight to Rumeli Fineri, and then through the Bosporus and the Dardanelles to Istanbul. And these are some pictures. And here we have our starting day in Varna, when we sailed from Varna close to Burgas, and based to our delays we couldn't test the rigging enough before we departed from Bulgaria, and so we overlooked in effect what I have already observed in ABORA I. because the vessel was a little bit rigged too much windward Crete. This means also without the lee boards on the bow, it had the affinity to go slightly into the wind. And this was not so nice because without the lee boards, as without keel under the hull, our side drift was quite a lot. And so we reached the entrance of the Bosporus, but in a not very good manner, as I observed on former ABORA 2 or 3 expeditions. Here are some very nice pictures from the passage, and on this day we did not get the permission to go under sail, so it was also a good decision for me, because with this unprofessional rigged boat I was not intended, I had no intention to sail through the Bosporus, because the vessel was not finished, as you can see soon, but it was nice for us to see the Bosporus, this bold city Istanbul, and we got huge support by the Turkish government, and so we got the invitation to Kalamash Marina and southeast of Istanbul, where we got the space and the time to improve the rigging of our boat. And the main idea was to reduce the sail, because the sail was too wide, and we rigged it, or we reefed the sail vertical to make it smaller. Here you can see some drawings, but the most important intention was to push the mast more in front to the bow to make it more leeward Crete. And this was interesting to see. We made this similar in ABORA 1, and this has to do with ancient experiences, because we cannot wake up Ramses II. How you created Utanko, how you did make it. All reed boats are unique pieces, so we have to test it very little, step by step, footprint by footprint, and so we were very curious to see how this changes. I don't want to say improvements, how this changes did work. And when we started in Kalamash Marina in Istanbul to cross the very windy Marmara Sea, all looks went up in the top of the mast to see how the new sail will react. And this was a funny story. We could, after this improvement, see that we could have full access to our lee boards on the bow again, and this means we could easily go across and even slightly against the wind, and this was the main condition before we entered into the windy Aegean Sea. Without the successful changings, I would have been stopped ABORA IV in Çanakkale. This was the plan from the very first beginning. And so we passed some big tankers, and the sea traffic was quite well. And after our arrival in Çanakkale, we were welcomed like American seafarers coming from the other side of the ocean. This was also the place where I got to know the Rose family, and later Atabay also sailed with us across the Mediterranean Sea. But first of all, we got the invitation to visit Troy, and with Rustem Aslan, I think you know him, the leading archaeologist, we had some very nice talks about Troy archaeology and prehistoric seafaring. We also visited some Trojanian horses. There are many of them, as you know, and it was nice to get to know this wonderful city. But then we had no time to relax, because our next goal was the Greek island Limnos in the northern Aegean Sea. And this was very important, because the sea route was in the beginning easy, later not that easy, because we got really tough conditions, 33 knots of winds. You can see the rough sea here. And later we had to navigate into the Bay of Polychny.
Sorry, what month is this again?
This was we departed end of August.
Okay.
I think we entered still in August to, let's just go back to the slide.
Okay, approximately.
Yeah,
End of. So you had the Meltemi coming at you.
We still had the Meltemi, but important is we had, and you will see this soon, we had to navigate into the Bay of Polychny, and Polychny was a metal trade center in the northern Mediterranean, especially in the Aegean Sea, even before Troy. Troy was erected a little bit later, and this is what we had to do. We had to go downwind with the Meltemi coming from the Dardanelles, but then we had to navigate against the wind to sail into this Bay of Polychny. And this is what the wind arrows indicates. The wind came roughly from about 40-45 degrees, and to come into this restricted area we had to sail at least under 85 degrees to come in this protected shelter space. And this is what the ancients have done. That's why you see here from the satellite, this was all settled in antiquity. And the city of Polochni became so important due to this geographical conditions in antiquity and in the Neolithic times. This is a picture we made with our drone from above, and you can see the remains. This is just a little part of the ancient city. And here the metal trade has started at the end of the 4th and the beginning of the 3rd millennium, also with golden artifacts which are identical to Troy. But they found also golden chains, and this is important. They are identical not only to Troy, also to Crete and to Thracia, as to the Danube Valley civilizations. And important are these so-called string separators, part of this golden chains. And this is important to know. These tiny pieces were found all over Europe. We know by modern excavations this type of architecture or these pieces were invented already in the 3rd millennium in the territory of Crete by the Minoan civilizations, and spread by sea trade up north, even to the Danube Valley civilizations, and from here it ventured further up north, even into the center of Europe in the so-called Aunjetitze culture. In Aunjetitze culture, these people were competitors of the Wessex culture here in England, and based to the very good conditions in the center of Europe, in the so-called Ore Mountains, they are in the same way as in England, full of tin. And tin was the most intended raw material, but in opposite to England, it was so easy drifting down river with the Danube River and then set over into the Black Sea or in the Aegean Sea. They could easily bring and transport this tin into the Eastern Mediterranean, and this is exactly what Herodot was reporting coming out of the antiquity, and that's why our voyage was so important for tin archaeology, because we could prove what Herodot has reported. And he said, or he is quoting in his books, I couldn't find out with my scouts anything about tin coming from England. The antique name was the Cassiterids in antique language. And he is continuing in his letters when he's writing, what I could find out that the tin came in the wake of the amber. And the amber trade is very well proven already long before the invention of bronze. It has started already in the 6th, 8th millennium before Christ. We can follow the amber trace even down to Egypt at the end of the 4th, beginning of the 3rd millennium. And this is the reason why I wanted to sail this route coming from Varna via the Bosporus, the Dardanelles to Limnos, because Limnos was a northern distribution center for the tin and amber trade in the early antiquity. And from here we sailed further south with very rough conditions, with the Meltemi now in the beginning of September. But the most important challenge was that we had to sail through the central of the Cyclades, and this is what I do to the time limits. I wanted to avoid this. I wanted to go my initially voyage to Lavrion and then to Milos and then set over to Santorin via the western way, but due to the time limits and we had no idea how fast ABORA will sail, we decided before we set into the southern Aegean Sea that we go through the shorter way, through the central Aegean, through the Strait of Eubea, and then we passed Antros, Tinos, Mykonos, and from there we had to pass 2 island channels from Paros and Naxos, and also Sykonos and Ios, and we had very tough conditions. But most important and critical fact is the modern navigation. When we sailed through the Strait of Eubea, we were surrounded sometimes by 6 cargo vessels, and we were in the middle of this modern vessels. Fortunately, we did this during daylight, so it was not so dangerous as I expected before. And then we had to make a turn east along the described island islands, Antros, Tinos, etc. And then we sailed into the channels of Naxos and Paros, and also this is Naxos and Paros, and this is Eos and Siconos, and we got 7 Buford inside of these channels. And so this was quite rough conditions. You can also see the pictures. When you see these waves, you think, yeah, it's just 1 meter high, but when you are taking these pictures out of the dinghy, the waves were much bigger. You cannot, with a 2-dimensional camera, you cannot get the height of the waves into the camera, so this gives you an impression that the waves were at least 2 meters high. And then we arrived in the sunset of the 4th day only, the northern coast of Santorini, and due to 2 smaller calms, in the last day we arrived at the entrance at midnight, and I decided let's anchor on the northern coast. We had quite calm conditions, 6-7 Buford is not that much, and so I decided to anchor here somewhere on the entrance, but in the next morning we got 8 Bufords, and this was very dangerous, and so we called for some escort, and then a Greek fisherman put us in the safe shelter place of, what to say, the Greek name is not Santorini, it's the opposite island, it's Tirasia, on the other side of the caldera of Santorini. And here we got the shelter to have a relax. We waited on new crew members, not only Atabai, also 2 other crew members changed the team. Also a Norwegian guy, our former skipper from ABORA I and sailor of ABORA II, came to Santorini to join us. And from here we made some excursions into the fantastic, beautiful landscape of Santorini. We also visited very historical places where we have very strong evidence that these waterways were sailed many thousand years before, also before the Minoan people. And then we wanted to set sail again, but already during our navigation from Limnos down to Santorini, I was in contact with Nuray Inotepe. He was a former honorary consul from Turkey in Bulgaria, and with him I smelted, or I welded the plan. Maybe we will bring back the ABORA IV back to Turkey, and Nuray made me in contact, or brought me in contact with Professor Hava Ishkan. She is a leading archaeologist from Patara, and together we decided, okay, let's bring ABORA back to Turkey, where it shall be displayed in the ancient port city of Patara, which I will present later. And so, but at the beginning we had to pass the caldera of Santorini. When we started we had northerly winds, when we were in the middle we got westerly winds, and when we came out we had southwesterly winds. So this means we had to navigate like a modern sailing craft through this caldera, and this is additionally an evidence how fantastically, how bravely ABORA IV was being able to sail with this changing, shifting conditions through this Bronze Age colony in the south of the Aegean Sea. And there's wonderful pictures to see also how bizarre this countryside is. It also passed the German battleship. Yeah, and originally we wanted to go north to the north tip of Rhodos, to go across to the winds, northerly winds, to Kash and Patara, but you can see here there is a low pressure area approaching to us, and we decided on the halfway it's better to go the southerly way, and this decision was absolutely right. We got over 30 knots of wind in the next days when we sailed from Fira to the south tip of Rhodos. Many people in Germany criticized me for this decision because at the beginning you wanted to sail to Egypt, now you go you don't want to go to Cyprus anymore, but they do not understand returning to Asia Minor was much more difficult instead of following the elements into the deep eastern Mediterranean, because when we wanted to sail back to Kash, we had to go against, or at least across, to the elements. And this is what the next pictures are proving. Number one is very strong winds from north and even rain, and it was not storm, but 7, almost 8 Beaufort. It's not so comfortable being out in the deep ocean. We also were in front of a thunderstorm, which was a little bit annoying, and also sailing overnight in such tough conditions. Atterbury was witness of this. Maybe you can also say a few words how you experienced this. How was in the ocean?
When you try and look at the horizon, you don't particularly see it due to riding the waves. It's much like a hammock, or as Dominique would refer to, a magic carpet, because you tend to glide over them. But as you glide over them, the ship also tends to go keel up, and you point downwards into the sea. Combined with the lack of visibility, it's a very interesting experience. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and you can also see this tension in the crew. It was quite tough days being in the mercy of the elements, especially we didn't know what happens behind the island. This was number one enigma. Fortunately, Poseidon gave us a half-day break. On the third day, we knew this before, that it will be a between high-pressure area, and it came exactly at the right moment when we sailed around the south tip of Rhodos. And in the evening, we knew a new low-pressure area from north will come and catch us overnight. And with this nice glass of red wine, we made bets how far we will come, because I promised my crew we will touch in the evening a nice Crete taverna and drink next red wine on the dry land. But somebody has opened the box of god Aeolus, because in the midnight we got this promised or predicted northerly winds, but not only a strong wind field, also a very terrible current field. And it was like a blue black hole which touched us and pulled us south into the nowhere. And this is what I can show here. We got 3 days of northerly winds, 2 days additionally with a very strong current, and we could set nothing against it. We sailed into northeast direction, but the result overground was almost 180 degrees, sometimes even 200 degrees. The wind came from here, the current came from here. We navigated apparently in this direction, but the result was south in these 2 days, and we could do nothing against this. On the third day, we still sailed with northerly winds, but you can see here, in average, our course was already positive, slightly into the northeast direction. And on the fourth days, not only the current stopped, also the wind came again from northwest direction, and it was easy to go like in a straight line. What you said to me, how you could do this? This is the efficiency of this leeward navigation. And if we compare our sailing capabilities with the Neolithic square riggers, compare this with the Bronze Age square riggers, and thanks to the drawings from Akrotiri in Crete, in Santorini, we exactly know how such a Bronze Age square rigger did look like. We can easily calculate the rigging, and this is astonishing that modern calculation brought that they were not able to go better than 60 degrees downwind only. Actually, I cannot believe so, because we know how bravely the Minoan sailed through the eastern and surely also through the western Mediterranean and in the Aegean world. But modern scholars are in the opinion that they could not go across to the wind. And this is, in my opinion, impossible. You cannot make sea treat in the eastern Mediterranean if you are not at least able to go 90 degrees. If you go only 60 degrees, I would refuse to go in such a vessel, because you are on the mercy of the elements if you are in the island channels and can only go 60 degrees downwind. At least ABORA could demonstrate we were able with this Neolithic square riggers any times to go 90 degrees across and against the current. But what shall I say, we had the secret weapon, these leeboards. I don't know without these leeboards how the Minoan civilization would have been made it, but we can demonstrate with our experimental data from ABORA III that we were, and 4, that we were able easily to go across 90 degrees, and in favorable conditions we measured on ABORA IV 85 degrees in the Marmara Sea. With ABORA II, which was a little bit better constructed, we were able to go anytime 75 degrees. You have to pay attention. Columbus with his modern caravels was not better to go 85 degrees maximum, but the medieval age sailors could go across to the wind. We were able to go with ABORA II easily 75, in good conditions even 65 degrees, and ABORA IV made similar like a late medieval age vessel 85 degrees against the true wind. This is a fantastic result. Yeah, and so we managed the last nautical miles from Rhodos to Kash. At the end, the weather turned into a wonderful holiday trip, like on a cruising voyage on a modern sailing ship. And Adaba is smiling, I can see this. Were quite nice memories when we sailed the last 200 kilometers, let's say 150 miles or 100 miles. And then we arrived to the lands of Lycia, these very tall mountains, where at the beginning we thought, are this clouds or is this mountains? Because Ataban knew the territory before, so we knew that it's very high mountains, almost 3,000 meters high. But it was a wonderful approach, and then later, after a short towing by the local authorities, we also even sailed alone into the harbor of Kash, and here we were again worshipped like North Atlantic crossers. And it was a very wonderful event for us. Also that the Turkish Minister of Culture and also the second minister, the deputy of the foreign minister, came to welcome us on Turkish territory. And yeah, and this is Nuray and this is Hava Ishkan, the famous lady from Patara, and they promised they kept their promise to rescue ABORA, and they made 2 iron scaffoldings. The first one was a little bit too weak, the second one was much tougher, and in the last 2 months they took her out of the water, and Hava has transported the ABORA vessel from Kash about 45 kilometers to Patara, and there it was exhibited, or at least storage. And last week I was in Patara, where we have reconstructed the cabins and the rigging, and now she is ready for preservation. This is what is being prepared now. Next week Hava will preserve her with experts from Istanbul, and so we hope that the hull will remain at least 1 or 2 years longer before maybe we will make a new hull for the exhibition in Patara. Yeah, what is the meaning of the expedition? We can categorically demonstrate that in Neolithic times it was possible from the Danube Valley civilizations and societies to sail at least to Limnos, where we have vivid evidence by the amber trade and later by the tin bronze findings that this waterway were regularly in transport, and from there it's so easy to go downwind to Crete, to Santorini, and from there even to Asia Minor. And for me it's for sure these waterways were in a very high level used also in earlier times. And today we can show the very windy Black Sea. We could cross the Strait of the Dardanelles and the Marmara Sea into the windy Aegean Sea, and from there we were even able to sail into the tricky Eastern Mediterranean. And we should not underestimate the difficulties for sailing in the Mediterranean, because we have the high mountains in the Balkan and also the Taurus Mountains here and the Caucasus a little bit up north, and the huge Sahara Desert in the south. This makes the Eastern Mediterranean to a very tough sea. Many people, many seafarers underestimate the difficulties of the Mediterranean, and it's a vivid proof, or at least evidence, that the ancients could easily do so. And many intelligent people say not at the finish you will become tall, but on the way to it. So I have to worship and also praise the efforts of my team. They have made the boat in Bulgaria over 10 weeks and then sailed this piece of reed about 6 weeks from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. And people came for many countries it was the highest international participation of all my ABORA expeditions I did before. We had even a Russian guy with us and an American, and this gives us a titter. And we have in our t-shirts dabei knows the Sailing for Peace. And I want to state Sailing for Peace is very important in our Balkan days because, in my opinion, world peace is the highest priority for our mankind. And if you look to Syria, what happens there, and also in Afghanistan, Africa, there are top crises all over Europe at the moment, and so we should also focus to Africa, which is maybe our highest priority, to give them aid and access to free energy and enough nourishment. And that's why I think we sailed also in the wake of Totora, who has done such voyages with internationals on Kontiki, on Ra and Tigris before us. And I think this was very important to demonstrate he is still alive, and we are, as a second generation, with next generations, we are sailing in his wake. At the end, what shall I say, ABORA IV has proven again that even with simple Stone Age technology, the impossible is possible. And when we are speaking modern human challenges, we have to think about the performances of the ancestors, because our modern technology, these mobile phones and our modern computers, make us sometimes somehow blind for the performances of the antique people. And in my opinion, the advanced societies did not fail due to the lack of ingenuity. They failed due to the impossible capabilities of changing conventional thinking. And this is exactly our challenge today. But I said also with a world peace priority. If we want to sail our society in a bright future, we have to understand past and how we can manage these knowledges and these lessons into our near future. And that's why it's so important to understand also the maritime interactions, the cultural interactions between such remote societies. And that's why I think ABORA IV could answer very important questions according to Black Sea archaeology and Eastern Mediterranean archaeology. And that's why I think it's also important to speak here in London about our results we have achieved. And what shall I say? Thank you very much for your invitation. Now I will invite you also in a small video trailer what we made a few weeks ago with the footage we have produced during the ABORA IV voyage, and just enjoy the pictures.
Thank you.
Yes, I hope you have many questions now that I might be able to answer.
Was there much seasickness?
Where is this big rock?
This is Santorini. See, this is the real island Santorini, and we are just coming out of the caldera of Santorini. And yes, and this was quite amazing countryside.
Was there much seasickness on your crew?
I cannot answer your question. I never got seasick on such a raft, and I just had this nice story what we experienced with ABORA IV when we sailed around Corsica. We got to know a Bavarian couple from Germany. They had a very small yacht, and the lady was very seasick, and they connected us. It's a small sailing yacht, and until the end of the rest of the expedition. And the lady was so seasick, I appealed to her, please come over. Said, no, I will destroy our nice boat. Let me die here on this yacht. And after 1 hour, I could convince her to jump over. And after 10 minutes, she wasn't seasick anymore.
So
it has to do with these amazing
movement.
capabilities of this ancient raft. It has about 30 tons of water. This makes it very stable, but also the material. As we discussed already earlier, it's softly, it doesn't jump against the waves like a modern sailing yacht. It's very smooth, very gentle. So even in strongest storms on the Atlantic Ocean, we never became seasick. Never. That's a promise if you will come. ABORA V.
At the top of the Aegean, there's either Tenedos or I think it's Tenedos, where you showed in the film there was the metalworking. Is that the island of Hephaestus?
No, this treasure what we showed, this was a famous golden treasure from Varna.
No, I mean
Limnos.
is it Limnos? Is it Limnos?
Limnos.
But I was just thinking that was Hephaestus's.
Hephaestus, he brought the smelting technologies from the Olymp down to Earth.
Yes, he was the god of
He's the smelting god, and this is the main question according to modern archaeology. How could such a small island be the place where they have invented bronze and tin smelting on an island? It has no resources in copper and even less on tin. But the only explanation makes sense that it is on the output on the Black Sea, where the traders came south, either from Thracia or from the Dardanelles, and brought these raw materials to this first Aegean island. That's why, in my opinion, this legend was cast with this smelting.
So there was one other thing Patara mentioned when he got back, that there was a wave, a single wave that came across, and somebody, I think maybe you, spotted it and managed to turn into that.
Yeah, this was a tiny shape of a freak wave. And yeah, you was there when it was astonishing. I never observed, I made some 1,000 kilometers now in such expeditions, but we never had such a wave, even in the highest storm on the Atlantic Ocean. It has collected all the neighbor waves. It was not super high, it was not much higher than the average waves, maybe 1.5 meters higher, but The main characteristic was it was a white wall some kilometers long, and when the wave came, and I observed it, and at the right time I turned the boat with a bow into the high wave, but behind this wave was no waves anymore. It was very, to say, tricky, very many small and bigger waves in between, in front of the wave, but behind it, it was smooth for several hundred meters, so to say. And this was really astonishing, and I have a good friend in Berlin. He sailed in the North Atlantic in a regatta through a similar wave. As with such freak waves should not be always 10, 12, 30 meters high. Sometimes they are lower. And when he sailed from Bristol down to Santander in a regatta, he met such a wave in the middle, in the Biscayan Sea, and his companion was sleeping in the cabin, and he had the wheel during the night, and it came similar to us like a black wall, rectangular, not with a typical architecture like a normal wave. And when he jumped, or when he sailed into the wave, he has rotated 2.5 times through these waves. The mast was broken, and we survived much better than our friend in Berlin. And it was nice. His friend who was sleeping in the cabin, when he waked up, he was dreaming he was on the spaceship Mir. When the sailing boat was turning 2.5 times around him, he was sleeping in the cabin, and the boat was turning 2.5 times around him.
So,
and then they landed, fortunately.
So with a wave like that, as I've sailed, if on a normal yacht, if you get hit sideways on, then that
might be very
could be critical,
Yeah.
because there's
and 4 meters are enough to capsize.
Yeah, there's a measurement, isn't there, from the amount of...
Yeah, it's hard to estimate. When you are on the cabin, you think it's not so high, but when you see pictures made from the dinghy, you have a completely different perspective. But my estimation was that this wave was about 1 meter higher, maybe 1.5 meters higher than the average waves, which were about 2 meters high. I would say this was about 3.5 meters, something like this. But the architecture is a problem, not the height. If you sail in 10 Beaufort, what we did in ABORA IV 2 times with 50 knots of wind, the wave can easily be 10 meters, but it's not critical because it's like a water mountain. But such a freak wave is like a wall, rectangular, and this is a problem. Not the height of the wave is a problem. The architecture, the shape of the wave, this is a critical point in storm. And this was such a wave which has collected all the neighbor waves and has accumulated the energy, and that's why this was a strange observation. Unfortunately, we couldn't make a picture. It was dark outside. And not many crew members even realized the danger in what we said. Many people, especially last meeting 2 weeks ago, we met in Petra, said you always speak about this small freak wave. We had no feeling. Of course, yeah, we sailed straight into the wave, so it was not this terrible. But I'm sure if they would hit us across, it would cause some problems, for sure.
So, what kind of speed would the boat make?
What do you would estimate in knots?
Oh, what I estimate? Well, it's very difficult, of course, because it's so dependent on wind speed. But surely the maximum would be something like the absolute maximum surely would be 8 or 9 knots.
That's too much, as we covered in very strong winds on the Atlantic Ocean, 6 knots.
6 knots.
But in our highest speed on ABORA IV was 4.6 knots in the Dardanelles, in the 7 Beaufort, and a little bit current. But the current was not so much. But I would say the average speed is something between, according to the wind speed, of course, between 2 to 3 knots. This speed sounds not very much, but you have to multiply this with 24 hours,
Of course.
and then you come easily to 60, 70 miles per day. And imagine carrying 10 tons of tin 70 miles on your back, you will not make it, especially in the completely different ecological environments than today. We have streets today, and Greenlands in former days it was all wooded. You couldn't easily walk around the countryside. It would last much longer than now. And so with the ocean and also the river belts, this was the World Wide Web in antiquity. So we could easily follow these waterlines, and that's why navigation is 10 times, maybe even 100 times more efficient instead of land hiking. And you can easily transport. Also, when Hava when she took out ABORA, they could easily measure the weight of the hull. It was about 36 tons. The tri-hull was 9 tons. So this means we have easily accumulated 15 tons of water. And you see here the reed bundles, the railing wall, so-called railing wall. It looks quite, quite low.
No.
But this is just apparent because Turkish and Bulgarian seafarers tucked us in a package and they shifted the walls down. In reality, the hull was wonderful, in a good shape. Hava measured the boat when we left Turkey 1 meter above the sea level, and when she took 5 weeks later the boat out, still 98 centimeters. This means we sank not much, and here we have in the middle about 1 meter still, even it does not look so. And I only want to express that even we were already 1,000 kilometers in the water, we could easily transport 10, 15 tons of cargo without any problem. The buoyancy of such a hull has about 60 tons. And imagine traveling 70 miles per day with 10 tons, 50 tons of cargo, it's impossible by land. But with seafaring, absolutely easy.
So how many voyages did you estimate that a craft like that could make?
How many?
How many voyages could a craft like that make before it would need to be completely rebuilt? So what's the lifetime of
We know from the Aymara Indians and from the Peruvian Indians on the Pacific Ocean, this type of reed called Sciurus lacustris has a buoyancy of about almost 2 years. But we have other species like Tufa angustata, it's called in Arabic language Berdi reed. It easily swims 3 to 5 years. And we know from ancient cuneiform texts from the Mesopotamians, they sailed away 6 months with such rafts. We know the names of the lands, Kupi, Umnana, Nanu, but we have no idea what they are speaking about. It might be South America, I don't know, it might be China. We know from Eratosthenes, he is reporting ancient travels of the Egyptians 300 before Christ, that the ancient Egyptians sailed with papyrus rafts even to the river Ganges to get species like pepper or other species what they could not get in Africa. And we know from the investigations from Ramses II, he had even silk fibers in the hairs woven. This means there was, even in those days, a certain contact, not only to America, even to China. And when Chinese archaeologists have excavated the giant pyramids of Xi'an, they found also tobacco into the tombs. So this is the tobacco could even come via China. And we know by the Shang people sailed at least since the 2nd millennium before Christ to America, very often. And before the Shang, we know Emperor Yu sailed already in the 3rd millennium to America. So the tobacco and even the cocaine could also come via this route into America, into the Egyptian tombs. But we have also evidence for transatlantic voyages. So we have to pay attention that the planet is rounded. We could easily go in 360 degrees without any limitation. And Totora has said this nice sentence: we divide today in 3 different oceans: Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. But in reality, it's only one ocean, not 3 different ones. It's so easy to go out of the Mediterranean.
In your mind, do you envisage in the Mediterranean, do you envisage dozens of these crafts going simultaneously, or hundreds?
I wouldn't say dozens. Good, dozen means Dutzend. Dozen, yes. I would say it was at least small fleets. And we can compare this easily to the Portuguese and to the Spaniards. They never sailed with only 1 or 2 vessels. It was also groups of 4 to 5 ships, as Francis Drake did also similar on his second world circumference voyage. Yeah, it's easy to estimate. It makes sense to estimate such small fleets, and you have to pay attention to the fact if you go with a fleet of 5 to 6 vessels, They also always sailed in a distance to 2 to 4 miles. You have a view of more than 200 kilometers to find islands. And they communicated with mirrors and with smoke. And it's easy then to communicate between the ships where the next land is being located. As I got this information in a conference in 2009 at the University of Oslo, where I was invited to give a speech about ABORA IV, and I came together with Norwegians, Viking experts, and they said to me, they sailed always with 5 to 10 ships when they sailed to Greenland, maybe even further to America. And then it's easy to identify a coastline if you are in a fleet of 5 to 10 ships. You can easily cover 60, maybe 100 nautical miles visibility, but you can never do if you are alone. But in a group of many ships, then you have access to much more visibility, and this makes it so logical. And especially speaking about Atlantic navigation and Mediterranean navigation, I crossed 3 times the Mediterranean and 1 time the Atlantic Ocean. Mediterranean is 5 times more difficult instead of the Atlantic Ocean. Even high north in the Gulf Stream, it was not so comfortable, but the oceanographical conditions, I'm speaking about the hydrodynamical forces, the wind forces, it's much easier to handle instead of the Mediterranean. And this is, not many modern scholars have it in mind when they speak about prehistoric trade in the Mediterranean. This is more difficult instead of crossing the Atlantic Ocean in both directions.
Yeah, on some of the earlier wall paintings, there were pictures of oared craft with oars. Is there evidence that rowing craft, oared craft, are also used? I mean, you don't use any at all, but not crossing the Atlantic, but most of the time you're within sight of land.
So in calms, you could at least go out of the bay. And
well, exactly. This is what I'm saying. Yes, you can get.
We did so in ABORA III. We touched a calm lasting 9 days, 9.5 days. This is more worse than any storm. And in the 6 days, I came to the idea: oh, we have life rafts, and the life rafts are paddles, and we could take out 8 paddles. We had 4 oars on the left side and 4 oars on the starboard side. And I gave the commands, 1, 2, 3. After 10 minutes, they had such arms, and I was so short in front of the Patara of the bounty. So we stopped this experiment after 20 minutes, but we could measure on our GPS 200 meters. So this gives you an impression, as you say, you cannot cross the Atlantic Ocean, but at least row the boat in and out of a bay. And we know from the Phoenicians, they did the difference. They anchored 1 kilometer away from the coast, which is what we did in ABORA II very often, and then they row with smaller boats to the coast, and they get in touch with the indigenous people.
Do you think you're going to have oars on a reed craft?
We did it. We had the oars in the life rafts.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Okay.
And we opened them in the North Atlantic, not in the ABORA II. We were the same type of life raft, but we had always, or almost always, favorable winds, or at least winds to sail. And that's why it was so important to sail into the bay of Polyogny on Lemnos. This was a PhD in this navigation.
Well, exactly. I was thinking of that.
Totally autark, sailing in and out. Yeah. And that is the reason why Polyogny became about 500 years before Troy so important, because it has this very favorable conditions in the shelter of this mountain, and then you have about 2 miles space to navigate out. What we did. And when we departed Lemnos in the beginning of December, we had very unfavorable conditions. We sailed in with 45 degrees of wind, and when we had to navigate out, we had 61 degrees. That's 20 degrees more headwind, and we even made it in this unfavorable conditions. And this is a very important evidence how maneuverability, or how high is the maneuverability of these rafts were, as presented on this golden plate before.
Could I also ask about lee boards? Because on modern, I've sailed lee boarders, but there is a lee board in amidships.
No, it's a lee.
And you've got the, yes, but they're amidships, and you've got them in the stern and the bow.
Yeah,
was there a reason for that?
Midships, because we have the cabines there, and we have cabines drawings also in such ancient Mesopotamian, ancient pre-Egyptian drawings showing leeboards and cabines. This means they must be on the outer side.
Yeah. And you've also got very subtle ability to alter the depth. Did you use all those different
Yes, of course.
depths
Yeah,
of those? And how
it's like a balance.
yeah.
And this is so fascinating, sailing this craft. You was a witness, so that you can prove me that I do not tell fairy tales here. You can easily balance it. You can make it totally neutral balance. This means you have no pressure on the rudder. That's why we always sail with women. They have no problem at all in doing these crafts, because Heyerdahl always avoided to sail with women, because he said to me, yeah, they are very quickly exhausted with this heavy rudder work, as they experienced in Hall 1 and 2 and Tigris. We never had these experiences. And you was with us when we sailed around the south tip on Rhodos. 2 women, also Sandra from Germany and Heike, sailed independently the whole craft around south of Rhodos, and this shows we steer the vessel with this, not with this. With this tuning of the leeboard too.
And do you use the 2 steering oars at the
Yeah,
back? Are they in at the same time, or is it? And are they connected? Is it a bar?
Yes,
across?
it's connected.
So
as in ancient times,
Yeah.
so this is the prototype, so to say, for the antique steering.
Yeah.
And to not have a misunderstanding, the rudders are just for the fine tuning trim, also for the fine trim.
Sure.
Because the main maneuver you do with the leeboards. Also if you want to go 70 degrees in that way,
Oh, yeah.
or 140 degrees, we don't do this with the rudders. The
Oh,
rudders
okay.
just for the shifting of the course. We call it in German Geigen, as the waves always try to push the boat a little bit out of the wind. And this ability we do with the rudder. But if you go this way or that way, only by the leeboards.
Wow.
Heyerdahl was never able to go with Ra 1 and 2 more than 10 degrees out of the wind. He couldn't do more. Without any leeboards you cannot do so. So you need the leeboards to control the courses more than 20, 30 degrees. Would be impossible without the leeboards.
But with 4 sets of leeboards, all
Yeah, this is
all
quite-
adjustable,
this is
and
quite-
coordinating those.
And you have to do this
somebody
simultaneously.
has to, exactly.
You have to do
Somebody
this
really
simultaneously.
has to know what they're doing.
And in former expeditions, we were even able to tack with the leeboards. Imagine you have to take everything in front in,
Yeah.
then you tack, you have to take it out, take it
Yeah.
at the stern in, and the boat. And to stop this movement, you have to turn, and you have to use the leeboards again in front of the boat. So you have to do it 2 times in and out in one maneuver. In comparison, simultaneously also with handling of the sail.
And yeah, I was just going to say, I'm watching the same.
Right, and the people have to know what they are doing, like in an orchestra. When I'm giving the command, I cannot say to 12 people what they have to do. They have to do know it in advance. And this is like in an orchestra, I'm just giving the partiture, but the musicians have to play their own piece of music.
So, sorry, so when the wave, back to that wave, the wave's coming over, you can only sit at night. You wouldn't have a lot of time to see and react to that. I've sailed and it's very difficult to react to anything, actually, just more or less hitting. But how were you able then? I'd assumed, wrongly, that you must have just swung.
Yeah, I did it with a rudder because we had quite favorable winds. So we sailed 90 degrees roughly across to the wind. And if you have, let's say, 2.5 knots of speed, and I saw this wave, we could even listen to this wave long before I saw it. There's a strange sound approaching to us, and it was almost, it was not with the moon, I think it was with new moon, as I cannot remember that we had a lot of moonlight, but I could see the white shape of this wave, and when I came, I just turned it with the rudder. The rudder is efficient enough to turn the boat, but you cannot steer the boat with the rudder. So I turned the boat with the bow into this heavy wave, and as I did in the Atlantic Ocean, we had much higher waves in the Atlantic. It was easy to do, turn it into the wave, and when the wave is coming, you sail it out of the wave with the rudder. This goes. But you cannot, the important is to distinguish such a maneuver. You can do a little bit with the rudder, but you cannot keep course.
Right.
And that's why I used the rudder to turn the boat into the wind. The wave came and I sailed out of the. That's why we survived it. was easy to do. And you know how it works. You do such maneuver with any sailing yacht every day if you want to handle it. Sail in the waves and then take it out.
How are the reeds bundled together? So
With
do you
simple
use
lines. Simple lines.
do you use like string? Is it, I mean, what's the material that packs them together?
We use modern materials not because the lack of trust in ancient materials, but I expected, I got always offers of exhibitions after each ABORA projects, and that's why we use modern lines, because they are UV protected. And the limited factor, that's an important question. The limited factor for papyrus raft in antiquity was not the papyrus or the reed, it's the line, the rope. Natural fibers have a lasting time period of about 8 to 9 months, not more. Herodotus, however, is quoting they made in antiquity long-lasting reed boards, but with leather, with the skin of animals. They put leather together to make the vessels long-term sustainable, and the same was being told by the Aymara Indians to me. They still have in memory when the Incas on the Lake Titicaca made big rafts for stone transport. They wanted to have these rafts at least 1 or 2 years alive. They also cut in tiny pieces the skin of the llama animals. And so the same story is being told on both parts of the planet. Again, the only fiber which is long-lasting is coconut fiber, but this was not known in the old world before Columbus. We know there are some exceptions. We have coconut fiber findings in India, 200 BC, but this is an exception. I will not overemphasize this archaeological case. But if they wanted to make long-lasting vessels, they made camel skin, cut in tiny pieces and put the leather together.
Yeah, then it wet them and then they dry them. So in addition, do you know exactly how the architecture of the boat was, or was there some experimental archaeology, shall we say, to try to match what you saw on the depictions, to the construction, shall we say? So, is there like a question mark into exactly how it was put together?
As exactly, I would never say we know exactly how they have done this, but we have wonderful scientific work by German and Austrian Egyptologists. One is the Austrian, it's Ringelmeier. He has been studied all pre-dynastic rock drawings in Upper and Lower Egypt and came to the conclusion the Egyptians used 12 different types of papyrus rafts according to the hull architecture. But what we are using is a so-called Sven-Lee type, which is comparable with the Magur type from the Mesopotamians. This is with this rectangular bend, high bend, so the bow and prow, stern and bow. And this type is well preserved even in the Mediterranean, and according to Ringelmeier and also to Hans Alexander Winkler and Leonard Woolley, other English Egyptologists and archaeologists, we know this type since the early 4th millennium before Christ, as well in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, and also in the Mediterranean. And I'm dealing with a British archaeologist from London. Now he lives in Spain. He is retired, Professor David Wall. He was the leader of the Interdisciplinary Institute here in London about interdisciplinary Egyptology, and we agree to each other that the Egyptians are derived from the Mesopotamians. This is in the early days of the Mesopotamians. They came in the middle of the 4th millennium before Christ to Egypt, to Sinai Valley, and from there they continued in their civilization, and we can easily prove this in El Obeid, and we can show Uruk 3 and 4 architecture in pre-dynastic Egyptian. In Hierakonpolis we have these wonderful tombs, and many evidence speak so for the theory that the Egyptians, one basement of the Egyptians is derived from Southwest Asia, also from Iran. Susiana had a big impact. Also the Elamitic people had a big impact into the early Egyptian people. And we have the same divinities. As a Horus, for instance, is an Asian divinity. It was not invented in Africa. The same is with Osiris. These are typical Asian divinities, which came by seafaring very early into the map. This means seafaring is older than the erection of pyramids.
With the lee boards, did you have any problems raising them quickly when you got into shallow water?
Yes, we had a lot of problems when we sailed through the Marmara Sea. We got an unexpected sudden wind change and we almost crashed it on the Turkish coast. We broke 3 lee boards, almost touching the shore, but with the heaviness of the sea and the gravity of this weight, we could survive this passage with a big shock, so to say. And sometimes in strong conditions, the lee boards are stopped when you want to shift them, but this is just normal with such a prototype working. But in all cases, we survived it and we managed the problems. Of course, you have always to treat these lee board fixations, and we have only these little experiences. When I would crew up in Alexandria in ancient days, I would get with a mother milk all this knowledge from my father and my grandfather. We are adjusting, we are playing modern cosmology. We are inventing in such a short lifetime this technology spec, but we cannot say it's exactly the same. We just have this 2-dimensional drawings. We know they are lee boards, we know they use them in a certain ways, but we have no idea how they really have done this. That's why this is what experimental archaeology is doing. We cannot reconstruct, but we can try to reconstruct it to understand how they possibly have done this. But I cannot say they have done this in this way. We just presume they have done this in this way. But we have the goods from one side of the ocean and the other side. This means somehow they must have managed the challenges of the sea. And it's for sure they did it much better. In a competition with the Argonauts of the Stone Age, we would be with our GPS the last one, arriving Kash, the other side of the Black Sea.
Also, did you try paddling on one side to sail closer up into the wind?
No, as I said, the gravity and the weight of this hull is too heavy to have a big efficiency. In calms, you could do this, but you will not accelerate speed by paddling the boat. I cannot imagine this.
Just to get closer into the wind?
It's very unlikely. Much more, you should more concentrate on the shape of the sail. This is the biggest reserve. As the trim of this ancient sail is the ultimate secret. How to do this. You have so many lines, you have the shape of the sail is super duper important. If it's rounded or it's flat shaped, this has more efficiency than anything else. And yeah, that's why we are just in the beginning of understanding. We have identified so many options to trim the boat with the lee boards, with the sail, but there are much more secrets than we have revealed until today.
Yeah.
I think so.
Can I just ask, when did Reed, for this kind of boat, for cargo, when was it replaced by wood? How long did it?
We can, actually it's important. We have drawings in the Aegean, starting in the 4th millennium. We have wonderful drawings also in Upper Egypt, showing that they replaced the reed and wood, and the end of the 4th is the beginning of the 3rd millennium. But even due to this replacement, we have very big sailed reed board presentations, even in Roman times. Even today, they are still in use in the
Yeah, no, I can see that, but generally for this.
But I would say with the introduction of copper and better tin tools, then it was not only splitting the planks. I think we know from the Polynesians they did it also with stone tools. It's possible to split planks with stone tools, and for sure they did it in the Aegean Sea as well. But Heyerdahl told me shortly before he died in 2002, I met him last time at the Kontiki Museum via Christmas in 2001. He met this famous German expert of Phoenician navigation, Professor Niemeyer. He is quite famous about Phoenician navigation. And Niemeyer taught Heyerdahl, and Heyerdahl taught me that Niemeyer taught him when the Phoenicians sailed in untouched territory, they did use papyrus boats, not wooden ships. And we know the reason. If you touch the ground, you did not get a leg or a broken hull, you will survive it. We did so in ABORA I at Corsica. We almost had a wreck, or we had a crash in Turkey in the Marmara Sea, but we would survive it because we have not an empty hull. And this Raft architecture gives you the safety to come back at home. Even when we lost the stone in the North Atlantic Sea, we could have survived this. My goal was to sail to the Azores. After the incident with the stone, I could easily go south to sail to Madeira or to Morocco. This would be easy. We could do so, but I don't want to do so. That's why we will keep going east against the elements, and we did so favorable until the last 13th storm. But if I would need to survive with my crew, I just should head more south, and then it would be easy to sail from our position to Madeira or to the Canary Islands. This would be easy. Going with the elements, even without stone, we were able to go with this reed across to the elements.
Is it possible that one of these boats, if it sank in the middle of the Black Sea, it will be preserved because of the anoxic conditions?
I know this, but this is more than a dream. Because the material is so soft, and even this was a problem from ABORA IV when we made it in 2005 in April, and we sailed it in 2007. Even it did not touch the ocean, it started to rot on the air. With the air humidity, it's absorbing this humidity and start to rot. You cannot stop this rotation. The same, by the way, will happen in Patara. We can just slow down the rotation, but we can never stop it. That's why it's so unlikely to find. It's theoretically possible because it's used to say nothing is rotting there. But maybe we should ask the British Bank to start a diving expedition. Maybe then we will answer your question.
But there's some parts of it that are made of proper wood as well.
Yeah, but if you find the rigging, you will never be able to put together the puzzling, the missing puzzle pieces.
Right.
No, I think the rock drawings in Gobustan, the rock drawings in Nubia, and the rock stations, as the drawing stations in Spain and Italy teach us how to make it, and we know it quite well how it would look like in the end of the 4th millennium. The question is how to reveal all this lost knowledge about the sail trim, but the Vikings do much better than us with their scarabus. But this society never collapsed completely. That's why we know how the Vikings did sail, and we do transfer a lot from this Viking sailing into our sclerical sailing of this ancient pre-dynastic vessels, because the physics is more or less the same. And when we have to speak reconstruction of ancient seafaring, we have to speak about physics. If you can go across and against the wind, has nothing to do with archaeology. It has to do with physics. And this is what the ancients have already solved. The major answer in sailing against the wind is just a physical question, not an archaeological question. This we have to pay attention to.
You want to ask something?
How much is 1 knot in kilometers?
1.82 kilometer per hour. That's almost 2 kilometers. This means when we say 70, 60, 80 miles per day, it's about 140 kilometers per day. And this is what we measured with ABORA IV when we sailed from Limnos down to Eubea, 220 kilometers. We made it in less than 1.5 days. So 1.3 days. This means 100 kilometers per day was not seldom, it was just normal. And then the Atlantic Ocean, we covered days with 180 kilometers per day. This means, and this is a problem of the archaeology. When they are elaborating such migration routes, they do this on a nautical map from today. But this is that map. The ocean is moving. The map is not moving, and they measure the distance between Africa and America. They measure 6,000 kilometers, but in reality it's not true. The distance is just 3,000 kilometers, because in 2 months the ocean is moving 3,000 kilometers. So if I have to say from Africa to America, I just have to say 3,000 kilometers. On the land map, or on the map, the chart is 6,000 kilometers. But in reality, it's just 3,000 kilometers. And the same is with the Gulf Stream. Of course, the Eddies were somewhere against us, but we had also very favorable days with the Eddies. We were on the opposite edge of the Eddy. The Eddy speeded us up to 180 kilometers per day. So you can never say it's this way or that way. It's always depending on the daily conditions, and they are changing every day.
Sorry, just one last point, a bit off subject, but you talked about the oceans always changing. So the geography is also changing as well. Just wondering, in Neolithic times, with the
it's about 6,000 to 10,000 years.
So would there have been the melts from the end of that mini ice age with, I don't know, would there have been a chance of been like waterways between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea? Was that a way?
We know this by modern geological investigations. This has happened long before the Holocene. There was a huge flooded area, but not in those days. But what we do know from climate investigations is it was much warmer than today. And this means we had more easterly winds than today. Today we are more badly influenced by the so-called west wind drift, which is facing to us. And this was a big problem also for the Phoenicians and for all other sailors who wanted to go out of the Mediterranean. We know by, I forget always the name, the famous Greek storyteller, Patara, or something like this. He is such a Greek guy who is reporting how the Phoenicians sailed out of the Mediterranean Sea against the ordinary winds. As we have only 2 months in the year when you can go downwinds from, let me say, from Malaga out of Gibraltar. This is with the so-called levantada, is the easterly wind which is rising between April and May. Then the frequency is slowing down. In the average in the year you have westerly winds. It's very hard to go out in the Atlantic Ocean. And the Phoenicians used the sail, put it with stone under the sea level, 200 meters, and then the current, the undersea current, is pulling you out of the Mediterranean. You have to pay attention what this means, to acknowledge, to get, not only to get the idea, to understand the dynamic of the ocean, that the Atlantic Ocean is going into the Mediterranean, and the undersea level current is going out of the Atlantic, into the Atlantic Ocean, and to get the knowledge how to use these forces. And we have also, with Professor David Rohr, we have discussed this idea to make such testings also in the Dardanelles with the sail of ABORA IV, to try to go back in the Black Sea, because Gilgamesh is saying they used stone things possibly to sail back in the Black Sea against the Martini wind. But we had not enough support and time to test this method anymore in ABORA IV, but might be a nice project for ABORA or whatever, to make the stone things from Gilgamesh, who's speaking. He speaks about such testings, how to sail back into the Black Sea, and just gives us a titter how much advanced their knowledge was. They were not stupid and thinking about sitting on. And I don't know, it was also a Greek author who said, we Greeks are so stupid and so blind, like childs, sitting like frogs around the past. Who said this? I always forget who said this, but you have to pay attention what he's speaking about. We are sitting like frogs on a freshwater lake and thinking this is a world ocean. It's nothing. And we know from Pomponius Mela, from Plutarch, from Diodor, from Sicily, they have it's for sure that they crossed the Atlantic Ocean. We have the wonderful story of the Chachapoya. They are living in the north of Peru, and the area where the Amazonas River is developing. And the Chachapoya look like me or like you, blonde-haired, blue eyes, even today. And we know they came from Galicia. It's the end of the last, shortly before Cyril, as a Christian birth, as in the end of the 1st century before Christ, they were they escaped from the Romans, and we have very strong evidence that they used Iberian ships to sail uprivers the Amazonas. And we have now DNA data and all this stuff to prove that, and they knew exactly where to go to. As they did not go to the Amazonas Valley by coincidence, they did it with high level intention. And we know from Diodor from Sicily, he is describing the arrival with an antique navigation. You believe you are reading the diaries from Columbus or other Portuguese sailors. He describes ship-able rivers, he describes fruit-able trees which are flowering and fruiting all over the year. He's describing very colorful birds, and the whole nature doesn't make any break. There's no place in the old world where you can find the same descriptions. This means he speaks about the new world and the different species. And we have evidence of pineapple, agave, corn, tobacco, cocaine, sunflower, and many, many other flowers were being induced long before the discovery of commerce. So this shows us. And we have Piri Reis, who speaks about such very ancient discoveries. And we have a fantastic map also found in the Serial in Istanbul, is showing a map from 1569, is showing the whole coast of North America, as you see, Peninsula of California. All this is depicted long before the Europeans touched it. This means somebody must have explored these territories long before Columbus. Who was it? We don't know. Surely not the aliens. Erich von Däniken. Yes, a lot of things to think about it. And yeah, that's why we should never say in science we know the truth. We just touch it, the truth, but we will never achieve the ultimate evidence. That's philosophical, from the philosophy impossible. Just approach. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.